Hello and welcome everyone to the world famous Adventurers Club of Los Angeles. My name is Andrew Medina. I am member number 1212 and I'm so glad to be your host for the evening. We got another great program coming at you tonight. I'm joined by the one and only Michael Lawler, who's going to talk about his adventures sneaking into various events. Now, Michael, there was a bit of information on the Adventurers Club website. You sneak into events. It's your, it's your thing.
It's what I do.
As a third-year law student, I have to say, it's an odd hobby for an attorney.
Yeah, well.
So let's jump right in. Well, I'm a huge baseball fan. I've heard you snuck into a World Series.
That's right.
Which one? Who was playing? What went on?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Sir Andy, one of my Knights of Redonda right here. Thank you all very much for coming and helping to share and enjoy the celebration of my 70th birthday party. And thank you for everybody who's watching on the website tonight, especially my cousin Meghan, who's a big part of this story, because I was traveling across country, driving, and stopped in Kansas City, Missouri, coincidentally when the World Series was on. This is the Kansas City Royals versus the Philadelphia
The Phillies.
Phillies, yeah. How could I forget? And I was hoping to get tickets, but it was sold out. And this was the first home game for the Royals. The first two games were in Philly, and so it was super, super popular. Nobody can get a ticket. Well, just go and see what happens. So I tried to get my uncle to go with me, but he didn't want to go. He wanted to watch it on TV, and I didn't want to go by myself. And my little cousin, Meghan, who was only 8 years old at the time, she's like, I'll go. And I thought, oh, well, that just raises the bar in terms of the degree of difficulty a little bit, but what the heck. So come on, let's go, Meghan. So we drove out, and it's easy to get into the parking lot. You just pay the $10. So I'm looking around for a scalper. There's nobody scalping tickets. So I had to go to Plan B. I had a few $100s in my pocket, hoping to get a ticket, but nothing. So I'm looking for a weakness in the security system and started walking around the perimeter gate, and sure enough, here is a large gate, big enough to drive a truck through, that's got one of these like horseshoe things that closes it, and it's shut but not locked. And I'm looking around, and I go, my God, they forgot to lock this gate, and there's no guard here. I just very casually opened it, pulled it open, walked in, shut the gate behind me. It was just that easy. Just before I left my uncle's house, I said, watch for us on TV. And he's like, oh, yeah, right. Okay, so now this is before cell phones, so I call him up on a payphone. I say, we made it in. Watch for us on TV. And he goes, you did what? How'd you get in? I go, well, I'll tell you later. So I went over and I got some food. So my hands were full, and I waited for a couple of guys with tickets in their hand but no food, looking like we were together. And we walked down, got past the usher that way. Best place to watch a football or baseball game is like right over the third base dugout.
Sure.
So we just walked right down there, about maybe 5 or 6 rows up from the third base, field level seats, fabulous seats. There's 2 open seats right there on the aisle. I couldn't believe it. So we just sat down. The guy right next to me, I knew he was going to say something, right? And I'm just waiting. And he looks over at me and he goes, I know you don't have tickets for those seats because this is a corporate box. I'm the vice president of the corporation. Those tickets belong to the president. I just talked to him by phone. He's delayed. He's on his way in here. You're welcome to stay there until he shows up. I go, great, perfect. So we're having some food and a beer and a hot dog, and the president, he didn't come for these seats until the middle of the 7th inning. I got nearly the whole game there. It was great. So as soon as he shows up, I gladly say, I'm just keeping the seat warm for you. And then we went and we walked way up to the view level, the top of a stadium. And I'm looking around, and here's a couple leaving the game early, surprisingly, because it's a close game. But they got their sweater and their binoculars, and they're working their way out. So they get to me, and I go, are you leaving? And they go, yeah. And I go, can I have your tickets? And he goes, yeah, sure. So he gives me their tickets, right? So now I have actual tickets for a seat. And so we walk down, and we're scooching our way down to those open seats. And just then, Darryl Porter, the catcher for the Royals, hits a foul ball right to me. And it was at the top of the arc, so it didn't even have anything on it. And I just caught the ball like that. And there's a camera like right there. They turn toward me, and the little red light goes on, and I was on TV screaming, I got a foul ball at the World Series. And my uncle at home saw me on TV. And here's his daughter going nuts. She doesn't even know what's going on. So that was my World Series event.
Bravo. And I'm sure that's the story that Meghan will never forget.
Yeah, oh yeah. Hi, Meghan.
Hi, Meghan. Now, you've snuck into the Academy Awards not once, not twice, but 3 separate times.
Yeah, I did.
How could you do it 3 times?
Well, the first time I did it by myself, I just had to kind of scout things out to see how hard or easy it was. It was at the Dorothy Chandler, and again, walking around the perimeter looking for a weakness in the security system, not knowing, hoping that something exciting would happen. And just as I'm walking around by a back exit door, the door pops open, and a guy walks out, and he just wanted to have a cigarette, and he can't smoke inside. And I grabbed the door just before it shut, and I walked in, and I'm backstage now, and I'm looking around, and I wandered around, and I found myself in the green room, and here's Richard Gere and Goldie Hawn, and they're having a shrimp cocktail or something, and I helped myself to some food, and we visited for a little bit.
Very quickly, how were you dressed?
I was in I think a tux, yeah. Okay. I was in a tux. Here's a picture right here.
Nope.
So then I kind of worked my way out in the wing. I think I was on stage left. I can't remember who was the MC that year, but it's not like an opera where there's 2 20-minute intermissions. The Academy Awards has like 20 2-minute intermissions. And so during these 2-minute intermissions, man, everything is moving around. People are moving, and sets are changing, and it's easy just to kind of like walk around. And then I walked off the stage and down and tried to look around, and I just took a spot in the back there, and some guy comes up to me, and he's got like a clipboard and a headphone, and he goes, "Are you a seat filler?" And I didn't know what that was. So of course I said, "Yes." And he goes, "I'll see if I can get a seat for you." And I go, "Perfect." So the next thing you know, he signs me some seats. Somebody had to leave early or got an award or whatever. So now I'm a seat filler at the Academy Awards and enjoying the show. It was just great. So that gave me the idea, and then years later, my daughter, Kelly, and my son, Scott. Kelly's here in the front row. There's a picture over there on the screen. And wearing her little cotillion outfit. And Scott, he's got his little cotillion outfit on there too. So I'm like, "Do you want to go to the Academy Awards tonight?" And she doesn't know any different, right? She's going, "Okay, sure, but only if I could bring a friend." I go, "Oh," she's at that age, right? So I go, "Okay, who would you bring?" And she said, "Bryn Mawr." Bryn's a really fun girl. I knew her pretty well, and went to high school with her parents. So I go, "Okay, good choice." So I called up Bryn Mawr's parents, and I said, "We're going to the Academy Awards. Get your daughter ready. Hair and makeup will be by in 10 minutes. And they're like, "Okay." And I picked them up, and we drove up to the Dorothy Chandler. And I don't know what I'm going to say, right? But when you're dressed like this, you can get by with just about anything. So here's the police barricade and everything, and they see me dressed like this, holding my kids' hands, and they're like, "Who would sneak into the Academy Awards with their kids?" And then, but actually, rule number 1 is don't add any undue attention to yourself. I couldn't have drawn any more attention to myself with these kids, but actually it worked in my favor because the tension's not on me now, it's on the kids. They're looking at the kids going, "They gotta be in some TV show. Did I see those kids?" And they're trying to think, the show then was like The Sixth Sense, and they thought Scott was one of the actors in that show or something. So anyway, I see this guy, he was walking, and he's actually holding his tickets like this, and he's walking. I go, "Quickly, we'll get behind him." So we're walking behind him, and he just kind of led the way for us. We got right through the red carpet and right up to the front door, and it's now time to actually give your ticket to get in. And so I said out loud to my kids, but loud enough so this ticket taker could hear me, I go, I don't know what happened to Mom. She's got the tickets. We better just wait here for her. And so that kind of was our story, our cover. And so we're standing there right by the front door of the Academy Awards, Dorothy Chandler, about 45 minutes before the show starts, and we saw all of the celebrities coming, walking through. I mean, as close as I am to you, everybody. It was really amazing. And finally, that ticket taker says, "What happened to your wife?" And I go, "I don't know." And he goes, "Well, why don't you wait for her inside?" He felt sorry for us, so he let us in. And then I got a program, and I said to Scott, I go, "Here's a pen. Why don't you hustle some autographs?" And the lights went on. He goes, "Where's the best place to do?" And I go, "In the men's room, because there's a line." And so he's working the line, and then he went to the ladies' room, and he's working that line too. Anyway, he got like the 30 or 40 of Hollywood's biggest names with these dedications in the program. To Scott, hope you enjoy the Academy Awards. Love, Jack Nicholson. And it's like, wow, this is crazy. So then the next year, it was at the Shrine Auditorium, and I asked the kids, "So, do you want to go to the Academy Awards?" It's like they go every year, you know. It's like a family vacation. So okay, so they jumped and got their, their cotillion outfit on, and Bryn Mawr wanted to go again too, so she went with us the second time. Actually, Bryn took this photograph. This is Scott and Kelly and me at the Shrine Auditorium. That was the year that Roberto Benigni won for Best Actor, and he was standing up on the chair. We were like right next to him, looking up, and I go, "Oh my God, this is crazy." Yeah. So, and afterwards, who are some of the other stars that we saw there, Kelly? Do you remember? NSYNC, okay. Justin Timberlake. Oh yeah, excuse me. Yeah. But who is the guy that did Austin Powers? What's that guy's name? Mike Myers. Yeah, he was there. He was really sweet with all the kids and posed for photos and stuff. Yeah, so that was a good year too.
It sounds like it. And you know what's amazing is I look at this picture and I look at you now. Maybe the hair's a little bit lighter now, but really, you look exactly the same as you did 23 years ago. 23 years 23 years ago.
Yeah.
Isn't that
amazing.
something?
Right.
But okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about is I'm a huge Laker fan. One of my earliest memories of sports is like watching Shaq break the backboard.
Oh, yeah.
And so when I found out that you had actually been to one of the NBA finals, I had to find out more. So what's the story with that?
So this is, I think, the Lakers hosting the Indiana Pacers at Staples Center.
2000, it's a good year.
Yeah, and my son Brian wasn't able to join us for the Academy Awards because he was off on a snowboarding trip with his buddies. So now it's kind of like his turn. So I said to Brian, "Do you want to go to see the Lakers game tonight?" He's like, "Yeah, Dad, sure, okay." Not realizing that, it's the finals and how big a deal it was and that we didn't have tickets. So we're driving up to Staples, and Brian's thinking about the Lakers, and oddly, I don't know why he said this, but he goes, "Dad, do you think we'll see Jack Nicholson?" And I don't know why I'd said this, but I went way out on the limb, and I go, "Brian, I guarantee it." Ooh, wow, that's really putting it out there. So, and then I kind of forgot about that. And then, so we're at Staples now, and of course the place is sold out, and there's probably 4,000 or 5,000 people outside Staples, and they had the big jumbo screen, the game playing live for all the people outside. Everybody is cheering wildly every point, and it's a really exciting game. The energy level is amazing, and then it's halftime. So I said to Brian, "Well, let's just take a lap around Staples and look for a weakness in the security system." He's like, "Whatever." So again, it's amazing. There's an exit door, emergency exit, and I see a guy on a cell phone, and he's talking to someone, and I quickly gathered what was going on. And he's talking to his friend who's on the inside, telling him where he is on the outside, which door to go to, and all this. And I said to Brian, we're going to just stand here next to this guy. I think something exciting is about to happen. And sure enough, that exit door popped open, and he ran in, and Brian and I ran in right behind him, and there's 4 or 5 other guys that were following us. Flight of stairs, we're running up the stairs, and there's an usher there, but he can't leave his position, so we go up another flight of stairs, then another flight of stairs. Now we're up at the top, and there's no usher there, so we just kind of gradually walked out and went over to the souvenir shop. I got a hat and a program and some food, and now we're looking for a seat. And so we walk down the aisle, and I'm looking, and there's, an usher there who wants to see your ticket and all that. Go down the next one, the next one, the next one. No usher, so we walk down. And right there, this was the overflow press section, and I thought, yeah, there's some open seats. Somebody didn't show up. I sit down. It turns out it was like the Berlin news. And just then, some gal from the Lakers comes over to give the first half stats for the reporters so that they can start writing their articles. So she gave them to me, and she's looking at me and looking at Brian. And I said, Dunka. So we're watching the game from this press box up there, and I go, God, we're awfully far from the floor. I think we can do better. So we get down, somehow we manage our way, and we're like 3 rows back behind the Pacers bench on the floor, and the crowd is going wild. There's like about 2 minutes left on the game clock. Every point is cheering. The noise in that place was incredible. And I could see the security starting to set up. They had a rope going all the way around the floor, and they're getting ready to kind of secure the floor so people weren't rushing it. But I thought, if we were quick enough and jumped, I think we can make this. So I held on to Brian's hand. I go, as the seconds are counting down, we're going to jump this rope and get out on the floor. And he's like, whatever. So sure enough, I could just see the clock ticking down the end of the game, and we leaped over the Pacers bench and out on the floor just before they put the perimeter up, and now there's like 40 security guards keeping everybody off the floor. But we're on the floor. We made it. And the confetti's going off, and the Lakers are so happy, and it's victory. And some guy from the Lakers has got like a sleeve of like 20 hats that say World Champion, and he's passing them out to all the Lakers. And I see this, and he's got like 2 left. And I go, hey, how about one for my kid? He goes, okay, sure. So he hands Brian a Lakers hat. This is a World Champion. So at that moment, it's only the Lakers and Brian wearing this hat. and now the crowd's getting big, and we're bumping into people, and I bumped into Jack Nicholson. He was there. And I said, hey, Jack, how you doing? I haven't seen you since the Academy Awards. And he looks at me like he's kind of seen me, doesn't really know. And I go, Jack, I'd like to introduce you to my son. This is Brian Lawler. Brian, Mr. Jack Nicholson. And they shake hands, and Jack leans over and says, enjoy the game, Brian? And Brian's like, whoa. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
I'm just
another day.
Just another day. I'm surprised you didn't get the jersey off Kobe's back, honestly.
We did get a towel.
Yeah. Honestly, more than most. Okay, so I feel like we've done baseball, we've done basketball. Now, for the last sport we haven't really covered yet, last major sport, football. You've gotten into a Super Bowl without a ticket, one of the most broadcasted events in the world.
Yeah.
Was it any more difficult than the others?
No, it just so happened. It just worked out.
Well,
so
let's hear it.
This was the Super Bowl in 1981 in New Orleans. It's the Oakland Raiders, and Jim Plunkett's the quarterback, playing the Philadelphia Eagles.
Let's go Raiders.
And being a California guy, I'm of course rooting for the Raiders. And I actually had a ticket to the game, thanks to my friend Paul Salata, who is Mr. Irrelevant. I don't know if you know about that.
Oh, yeah.
Celebrating not the first but the last pick in the NFL. And I helped him out with some tickets earlier to something else, so he's reciprocating, and he got me the tickets for the Super Bowl. So we went together to it's called the Commissioner's Ball the night before, and it's this really fun party, coat and tie, all the celebrities are there, lots of food and drink, and I got sick on some bad shellfish.
Oh, no.
And about midnight, I felt like I should go to the hospital. I'm back in my hotel room, which was the Holiday Inn or the something just right across the street from the Superdome. And man, it is really, really bad. I mean, it's coming out both ends. And I thought, I can't go to the game. I should go to the hospital. And so he came to me the next morning. He goes, Michael, it's time to go to the game. And I go, I can't do it. I got to go to the hospital. Take my ticket. Well, I waited in the room, and I'm watching the first quarter of the game on TV in my hotel room, and then all of a sudden, like flipping on a light switch, I felt better. I just got better like that. And I go, huh. Well, I got up and took a shower, and because it was coat and tie the night before, I thought, maybe I'll put the suit on, maybe this might help. And then I reached in my pocket, and oh yeah, the NBC film crew was at this party the night before, and they're passing out these little lapel pins, and I got one. It was in my pocket. I put it on my lapel, and I'm looking at myself in the mirrors. I'm tightening my tie, and I go, this might work. So I walked across the street from the hotel, and now it's like the beginning of the third quarter. So late in the Super Bowl that there's only one entrance open, and that guy hasn't had anybody come through his turnstile in probably 20 minutes. And I walk up kind of purposefully, like I'm in a hurry, like I'm busy, and he goes, your ticket, sir? I go, NBC film crew. He goes, oh, okay. Poof, lets me in just like that. So now I'm trying to figure out, where was my ticket, my real ticket? I wanted to go sit with my friend. I couldn't remember. So I thought, let's try the field. So I got to the 50-yard line and walked down those steps quickly, like I was important or had something to do. And there's the guy at the bottom of the field there, he's watching me. And he stops me momentarily, and he goes, your field pass, sir? And I go, NBC film crew. He goes, oh, okay. Lets me on the field, just like that. So I watched the rest of the game from behind the Oakland Raider bench and plunk it through the touchdown pass. We're cheering wildly for our Oakland Raiders. They won the game. Back in the day, they didn't do the trophy presentation on the field. They did it in the locker room. So, of course, I ran with the team off the field into the locker room, got a champagne bottle. I'm shaking it up, going nuts. Woohoo! And there it is, the trophy. Yeah, that's one of the programs, I think. So, yeah, that was pretty cool. Then the next morning, this is now Super Bowl Monday,
right?
And everybody wants to, of course, get out of the airport at the same time. Well, it's super packed. I actually had a ticket on a flight on a Delta. The flight had to go through Atlanta, and it was a late afternoon flight, and I really needed to get out earlier. So I got to the airport about 8 in the morning, just to carry on. And yeah, that's the airport back in the day there. And so I get to the Delta desk, trying to get out on this flight, standby, and the guy goes, oh yeah, let me have your ticket here, and I'll call your name if we got a seat for you. And it looked pretty crowded, and everybody boarded, and then he called my name, and I go, great. And he goes, yeah, I'm sorry, we don't have a seat for you. Here's your ticket back. But we might be able to get you on the next flight. It leaves in about 45 minutes. And I go, okay, stick around. Okay. So next flight, same thing. It was full. I didn't get out. He goes, we got another flight in about an hour and 15 minutes. Stick around. I go, okay. That flight was full, too. He called my name, and he gave my ticket back. And he goes, man, we're really full today. So I'm thinking about it, and I'm looking around, and the gate agent left her position open, and she didn't shut the door or anything. She walked down the jetway because some guy's having trouble. And so I thought, I got a ticket, right? It's not for this flight. It's not a boarding pass, but whatever. So I walked down the jetway, ready to hand this ticket to somebody, gonna play dumb. And the flight attendant at the door didn't know any different. She thought I must have had a boarding pass or something. So she just greets me, welcome to Delta Airlines. And I get on the plane. And I thought, well, there's got to be one seat on this plane. It was a L-1011 300-seater. So I walked down the aisle, and there's nothing, nowhere for me to sit. And I get to the very back of the plane. I go, oh, shit, I better get off this plane quickly. So I turn around and look, and they had just shut the door. I go, ooh. So I'm looking around. What am I going to do? Well, there's no flight attendants in the back of this plane the way it's set up. So I went into the head and shut the door, knowing that if you latch the door, you know, the light goes on saying occupied, and also the flight engineer in the cockpit will know because a little light goes on for him. So I was in the head. I put the seat down. I sat on the toilet, and there's just a dim enough light so you can kind of see what's going on. Your lights get adjusted. So I was in there for takeoff, and we had to fly. It was about an hour and a half or so from New Orleans to Atlanta, and believe it or not, there was a little meal service on this plane. And I was hungry at this point. So I got up and went to the galley, and I said, can I please have my meal? And she goes, oh, yeah, sure. So she hands me a meal. This is back in the day when they had magazine racks. So I got 3 magazines. I got my meal and went back to my little room. This time I could latch the door so the light came on so I could read my magazines, and I'm eating my sandwich. And I was in there for the landing, too. And when you land and the seatbelt sign goes off, well, everybody jumps up to get their overhead, and knowing that there's no flight attendants right back there, I thought, there's no problem. So I waited a couple of minutes until it was, and then just opened the door and walked out and kind of got lost in the crowd. And so that was I told some Delta flight attendants this story, and they go, oh my God, you rode the blue room. That's what they call it, the blue room, because I think if there's a little turbulence, that blue stuff catches you in the ass.
Well, I think you're the only person I know who's ever had a private room on an airplane, as it were. And that's not the only flight that you've stowed away on either, is it?
That's right, yeah. There was another flight from Europe. So what happened was when I graduated from USC, and I got some fellow Trojans here, including my friend Dean Torrance there. Fight on, Dean. Yeah, and yeah, great shoes there, Cardinal and Gold. So anyway, when I graduated from USC, I went to USC Travel, and they had a special round-trip flight to Europe for only like $300 or something. It's super cheap. I go, I can afford that. So I got the backpack and the rail pass, and I was over in Europe doing my reconnaissance mission. Went to 13 countries in 10 weeks. It's now time to fly home. So I get to this little airport. It was in Ostend, Belgium, because I think they had the lowest landing fees of any airport in Europe. And there's no flight. And so I went to the information desk, and what happened to my flight? And they go, oh, your airline went bankrupt. I go, okay, so what do I do? And they go, what's your name? And I told them, and they go, yeah, your name's on the list here. Here's the number to call. And it was the embassy in Brussels. So I called this guy up, transferred a couple of times. He goes, what's your name? I told him. He goes, yeah, your name's on the list. Can you get to Paris by noon tomorrow? We'll get you on a United Airlines flight home for free. And I go, really? Okay. But my rail pass had just expired, and I had no more money. And this was back in the day when I was really on a tight budget. So I thought, what am I going to do? So I'm looking around this airport, and just outside there's like a little cafe. And there's this sweet little German couple, a couple years older than me. And I just sat down at their table, and I said, can I join you, please? And yeah, so I started telling them stories, and then I popped the question. I go, would you please drive me to Paris? And they go, okay. So they went way out of their way and drove me from Ostend, Belgium to Paris, and then made sure, because I'm telling them stories the whole way over, it was like a 4-hour drive or something. And this is like the next day, and we get to the airport, and they waited for me to make sure I made the flight. How courteous is that? Amazing. Well, I get there, and I introduce myself to the agent, and they go, "Shit, we don't know anything about you getting on this flight. You can't get on the plane without a boarding pass or a ticket." And I go, huh. So I kept that guy's phone number, and I called him back. I go, at the airport, Paris, right where you know. He goes, "Where?" I go, "Paris." He goes, "I told you London." I go, "No, you told me Paris. I wouldn't make that mistake. I'm in Paris. What's the deal?" He goes, "Well, can you get to London by noon tomorrow?" And I'm like, oh my God. So I go back, and the little German couple, they're still there waiting for me. And I go, "Wrong airport. Can you take me to Calais and loan me some money for the ferry to get across to Dover?" And they're like, "Okay." So I took their name and phone number, and I actually paid them back. And they gave me the ferry fare, and I got across the channel to Dover, and I thought I'm going to hitchhike to Heathrow. Well, in England, they don't pick up hitchhikers. It's just not what they do. So eventually, I'm like running out of time. I might miss this flight. So I stood out in the roadway, and I stopped a truck, a lorry, and the guy's like, "What?" And I go, "Can I get in? I need a ride to Heathrow Airport." And he goes, "Okay." So this guy drove his big-ass truck from Dover all the way to Heathrow Airport. I'm telling him stories along the way, and we feel like we're bonding. And so he drops me off at the terminal, and I go in, and I get to the United Airlines counter. I'm so relieved. Finally, I'm here, and I tell them the story, and they go, "We don't know anything about you getting on this flight. You're not on the list." I don't know. So I'm like, oh. So I went over to, this is in 1975, okay, obviously before computers. And one of the gates that was not busy, there's nobody there. When nobody was looking, I walked around to the agent side, and the drawers are not locked. I opened a drawer, and that's full of boarding passes. And this is back in the day where you just wrote your seat number with a black grease pencil. So I'm looking around, nobody saw me. I got the grease pencil, I just wrote 34C on a boarding pass and got in line. And I got on the plane. And the pilot, I guess, was informed that they're one over on the head count. And they're like, "Okay, you better do another head count." So the flight, and I didn't want to sit in 34C, by the way, just to be sure. So, and the flight was only about half full, so people are just sitting wherever they wanted to. Made it even easier. But I saw the flight attendants walking down as a double aisle, so they're looking, and you could just see it in their eyes. They're doing a head count. And I'm like holding my breath going, well, they'll never know who it is, right? And the last thing you want to hear as a passenger, "Would the stowaway please stand up and identify themselves?" No, they're not ever going to do that. So the pilot made the decision. He said, let's just go. There must be some mistake. So they shut the door, and we took off. We made it home that way. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, amazing. I was 21 years old.
Incredible. So, folks, we have a lot of first-time guests here, so you should know. Here at the Adventurers Club, we like to divide our adventures up into land, sea, air, and space. Now, we've talked about the land adventures. We've talked about the air adventures. Space, not yet.
Coming.
But let's talk about a sea adventure.
Okay.
You stowed away on a replica of the Endeavour.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is a pretty crazy story. So I happened to be in San Diego to see this replica of Captain Cook's Endeavour, and it's an amazing ship. And it was on its way up to Newport Beach. And so I came back, and the next day I reported at the, I was a member of the Rotary Club, and those guys know some of my stories. So I said, we got to go down there as a club and see this amazing ship and maybe get a tour on board. And one of the guys in the club challenged me and goes, "Michael, I dare you to stow away on the Endeavour." Well, the ship had already left San Diego. It's at sea. I mean, it's going to be arriving at Newport the next day. And I'm like, that's impossible. Of course, I accept. the challenge. I just got to figure out how to do it. So I'm thinking about it, wondering, and then I heard that there's a group of VIPs who paid some extra money, and they're going to meet in the parking lot where the Reuben E. Lee is, and there's going to be this bus that takes them down to Dana Point, and they're going to go out on a boat to meet the Endeavour as it's passing Dana Point on the way into Newport, and those guys are going to get to board Endeavour to be on the ship as it arrives into Newport Beach. I go, well, I just have to be somehow with that group, but I'm not on the list, right? So there's no time to make it happen or anything. So I'm like, how am I going to do that? So I got it. So I had a pretty big camera with a big flash. It looked like something that newspapers would have or something. So I got to this parking lot where all these VIPs are meeting at 3 in the morning. And the guy in charge of the list in the group, he knows me. And he's looking at the list, and he goes, Michael, you're not on the list. And I go, oh, didn't you get the email from Wendy? And this is back in 2000 when emails were kind of just new. And this is an older guy, and I knew he didn't even have email. And so that was just enough to give him pause. And I go, I'm the photographer for the group. Didn't you get the email? And he doesn't know what to say. So I just took over. In fact, Steve, why don't you get together here? All you guys gather around. We're going to get some pictures here for the newsletter. And I just started taking a bunch of pictures, like a newspaper photographer would. Of course. Organizing the whole thing. And then I said, okay, everybody on the bus now. And Steve was like, okay, whatever. So we just got on the bus, and he didn't know. And so now, once you're down in Dana Point, they don't know, and you get on the boat and then out to the ship. The captain doesn't know who the list is, right? So I'm chatting it up with the captain. He was really a good guy. And I said, I'd like to get some pictures. I'm the photographer for the group. I'm really into the role now. So he let me go all the way up the top of the mast and get some amazing shots. I made sure I got pictures of everybody in there. So I actually took over the role as photographer for this trip because they didn't have one. And I got all the pictures developed, and I gave them to the museum that was sponsoring this thing. So as we're coming into the harbor, the captain is reading his orders for the day. And I'm next to him, and I hear him say, oh, shit. I go, well, what's the matter? And he goes, well, I asked permission to fire the cannon as we're coming into Newport Harbor, and they said no. And I go, let me see that. And it was like this request that he made to the city council, and the city council said no. I took the papers, I tore them up, and I go, I give you permission to fire the cannon. He goes, great, that's what I wanted to hear. So as we're coming into Newport Harbor, he tells the guys to load up all the cannons, and they start blasting the cannons, and oh man, it was really exciting. So then he's kind of like rounds the corner to come from the harbor entrance into the main channel. A little bit close, and I know there's some shallow spots over there and some rocks, and so I tell him, I go, hey, you got to get back out in the center of the channel because there's a shallow spot up there. What do you draw? And he told me, and I go, yeah, you might bump the bottom. It'd be kind of embarrassing. So he gives the order to come back out in the mid channel and going down there. He goes, you know your way around this harbor? I go, yeah, I've grown up here. I know it really well. He goes, well, tell me where am I going? And he goes, that's my first time. I told him how to go and what to do, and he goes, you're really good. I want you to be my pilot. I go, okay. And then he asked, what am I doing when the boat's leaving? And he wants me to come back on the boat and be the pilot to leave the harbor as well. So he let me take the wheel as we're coming into the dock. So here's all my buddies from the Rotary Club that came down to see whether or not I actually stowed away on the ship. And here I am at the wheel, bring it into the dock. They're like, oh my God. Yeah. It was pretty fun.
That's pretty fun. What did you get for winning? Because it was a bet, right? It was a dare.
Yeah, I just bragging rights, I guess. That was it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we've heard stories from the West Coast, and we've heard stories from Europe. I want to split the difference a little bit and hear about stories from the East Coast, in particular, our nation's capital. So, is it true that you have snuck into the White House?
Yeah, I did that. You'd think that some things would be just like impossible.
You would think.
But I happened to be in D.C., and Reagan had been president for just about 3 or 4 weeks, 3 weeks, I think. And the morning paper, the Washington Post, announced that it's Reagan's 70th birthday. Hey, he's 70, I'm 70. And so I'm just thinking, it was just a hunch. I bet the West Wing staff throws him a little party at lunch. And then I was thinking, that'd be kind of cool to go there. And then I started thinking, how would I get in? And then it came to me. I got the idea. So if you know the White House, next door is called the Old Executive Office Building. And it's relatively easy to get into the Old Executive Office Building compared to the White House, right? But it's all within the same fence and same kind of security, sort of. Well, I had a friend who was working in the Old Executive Office Building, and I called him up and I said, hey, I got to see you. It's really important. Can you put my name, at the front? And he goes, yeah, sure, okay. What time do you want to see me? I go, how about 11:30? Okay. So I get in to see him. He goes, what'd you want to see me about? Nothing. And he goes, well, what are you doing? I go, well, I'll tell you later. So now I'm back down in the lobby of the Old Executive Office Building, and they had payphones. I go over to the payphone, I pick it up, and pretend to dial, pretend to make a call. So it just kind of gave me cover of what I'm doing. Actually, I'm just waiting, stalling, waiting, hoping. And then I see it. Two of Reagan's top lieutenants, Lynn Nofziger and Mike Deaver, come out of the elevator, and they're in deep conversation. And it's now about 10 minutes to 12, and they're leaving the building, walking over toward the West Wing. And I go, they're going to, they're Reagan's closest friends. They're going over for his lunchtime birthday party. I'm just gonna follow him over. So I'm wearing a 3-piece suit, Brooks Brothers, to look the part. And I've got around my neck a little badge that says A is for appointment, but it's for an appointment in the Old Executive Office Building. But I'm with Lynn Nofziger and Mike Deaver, and the guard knows these guys because they're over there in and out every day. And so they're in such deep conversation, they don't even realize that I'm close on their heels. It looked like I was their assistant or something. So the White House guard, he just opens the door for the three of us. We walk in, and we make a left turn and go up the flight of stairs, and a right turn and a left turn and a left. And next thing you know, we're in the Roosevelt Room in the West Wing of the White House. Wow. And it was that easy. And boy, I tell you, the adrenaline's going. And by the way, that's why I do this. It's just such an adrenaline rush. And so there's only about 10 people or so in the room, and I thought, is this it? I don't know. And then another 10 people show up, and another 10, and pretty soon there's like 40 or 50 people. And then somebody from the White House commissary brings in the birthday cake. Look at that thing. And then in comes the entire cabinet, and you recognize these guys, right? Because they're in the news. And then Nancy comes in, and she's all giddy because she pulled it off. It was a surprise party for Ronnie, and she's like, "He's coming, he's coming." And then a second later, in walks the President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, and we all say, "Surprise!" And then I start the song. I go, "Happy birthday to you." And everybody joins in. "Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you." Oh my God. I was pinching myself. Is this real? I can't believe I did it. So anyway, here's a picture from that. So anyway, it's easy to get out of the White House. I mean, nobody cares and pays attention to that. So I had a piece of cake and then took my leave. Yeah.
Of course. They're just natural as can be, I'm sure. But that wasn't the only encounter you had with Reagan or run-in you had with him.
Oh, there was another one. Yeah, you're right. So about a month later, maybe 2 months. So remember, he was there was that assassination. He actually got shot, and He was in the hospital for a few days and got released. Well, he decided to do a joint session of Congress speech at Capitol Hill. Well, you can imagine how tight security was, because here's the President of the United States, just recovered from an assassination attempt, doing his first public appearance before a joint session of Congress. He got everybody in the White House, the full cabinet, the Supreme Court, the Joint Chiefs of Staff from the Pentagon, the entire Congress, members of the Congress and the Senate, and the diplomatic corps, all these ambassadors. Well, it was a really, really tough ticket. Ed Meese at the time was the chief of staff, and his wife wanted a ticket. This was in the paper the next day. Ed Meese, chief of staff, could not get his wife into this event. That's how tight it was. A friend of mine challenged me to sneak into this event. Fortunately, the Washington Post that day had an article about how tight the security was. And they went into detail for me about all these different levels of security. And I'm reading this carefully, and I go, that looks pretty tough. There's got to be another way. Well, if you know the Capitol, across the street from the White House is, I think it's the Rayburn Building. It's where the Congress, and in the basement is a little subway that goes from that office building over to the Capitol. It's just for members of Congress to get over quickly, especially if it's raining or snowing or too humid outside. And I thought, there's probably going to be some members of Congress that are going over to see the speech by that little subway. Maybe that's a way. So it's easy to get into that building. There's a guard that opens the door for you. They don't care. So you walk in, and I know how to get down to that subway. And I take a peek around the corner, and there's just a sleepy Capitol Police there he doesn't care. And so I hang out around the corner out of his view at a drinking fountain, waiting, hoping maybe something good will happen. And a congressman comes by that I recognize. It was Ed Roybal from Los Angeles. And, because I lived in LA, the 4 years I went to SC, I knew of him. And so I went over to him. I said, Congressman Roybal, I'm one of your constituents from LA. I went to USC. There's really something very, very important I have to talk to you about. And so as we round the corner and the Capitol Police sees us, we're in conversation together. That's my cover, let's say. So he's got the little lapel pin that says Member of Congress. And we get on the subway. Where it says members only. Is the mic okay? No.
Might be dead. Lance, can we get a handheld up here just in case?
Oh, there we go. Good. So, it's working again now.
Oh, so, just in case, we'll hold on to that one.
And so the subway just takes off, and it's going out. It's a really short ride. It's less than a minute. And Congressman Roybal turns to me and goes, "What was it that you wanted to talk to me about, son?" And I go, "Well, I just wanted to get in to see the president's speech tonight, and I thought you might be able to help me." And he goes, "Well, just keep walking and talking with me. You're doing okay so far. I don't care." So at the other end of the short subway ride, there's a metal detector. That's it. And you walk through that, and you're on the floor of the House of Representatives just 5 minutes before the president takes this and does his speech. And Congressman Roybal says, "I can't get you a seat, but there's standing room over there next to the podium. You might just go over and hang out with those other staffers." I go, "Thank you very much, sir." So I did. I walked right over to there. Again, the adrenaline rush was amazing. And there's a phone there, and I picked it up, and I know that if you dial 9, you get an outside line. So I called home, and I go, "Hey, watch for me on TV." And sure enough, they did. They couldn't believe it. So I was one of the guys that got to actually shake hands with Reagan just before he took the podium to give his State of the Union speech. Amazing.
Amazing. Michael, I think in a different life you would have made a pretty good Evel Knievel.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Daredevil type.
By the way, a year ago, I was on a whitewater rafting trip on the Green River, and one of the other guests I go, what do you do? And he goes, I'm retired Secret Service. I was on the White House detail. I go, I got some stories for you. He was very interested in how I did it.
I'm sure he appreciated them.
Yeah.
So that's Washington, D.C. Absolutely incredible. I want to return home to L.A. now. Now, you've snuck into the Grammys.
Yeah, this is a good
as well as the Academy Awards.
Yeah. So back to my Rotary Club for a second. So I half jokingly announce at the club, hey, the Grammys are coming up. Does anybody want to sneak in with me? Not serious about this at all. But one of the other guys was all over me and goes, let's do it. I go, oh, I was just kidding. And he goes, no, we're going to do it. I know we can do it. I'm with you. If I'm with you, we'll get in. So, we dressed up. We drove up to Staples. I'm telling them some stories, including the Super Bowl where I used the old NBC film crew line. So we get to Staples, and Staples had just opened. I wasn't familiar with this. This is my first event at Staples, the Grammys. And, of course, we don't have tickets. And so everybody's kind of like lining up and making their way through, and they all have tickets, right? And so I'm kind of like laying back wondering what my friend's going to do, because he goes, I got this. I go, I don't think so, but go ahead. So he goes up to the gal at the turnstile, and she's like, your tickets? And he goes, NBC film crew. And I go, oh my God. Well, first of all, it's CBS covering this event, you idiot. So, and then I got it. I figured out how to save the con, so to speak. So we just kind of pushed our way through the turnstile. So we're now just inside, and I gently put my hand on her forearm, and I go, excuse me, is your supervisor available? Maybe we could speak with him. Knowing that she's kind of trained, anytime there's like a situation that you're not sure about, it might be legit, but you don't know, turn it over to the supervisor. Let him decide, right? So sure enough, she calls out, and he's way like at the other end of this room. Oh, Mr. Hernandez! And he sees that there's a problem and starts walking over toward us. And I go, thank you very much. And I leave her with my buddy as my wingman, and we walk over to him, knowing that she can't leave her position because it's an open turnstile. There's a guy right behind us with tickets that wants to come in. So he sees that there's a problem. He sees that we're already through the turnstile. He doesn't know what the problem is. He's ready to help and not sure what the deal is. So he comes up to me, and now we're far enough away that we're out of earshot from her. He goes, what's the problem? How can I help you? And I go, I really got to take a leak. Where's the nearest men's room, please? And he goes, it's right over there. So she sees that we have this conversation, and he directs us into, and so she's like, whatever. So that was it. That's how we got in to the Grammys. This was in 2000, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
And so again, we use the old con where we get some food and we have our hands full. We find two guys with tickets, but we follow them in. So we get past the usher, and now we're looking around for an open seat. And they have seat fillers too, just like the Academy Awards. But we take a seat kind of over on the stage. That's the view that we had, just like that. That's amazing. So Kid Rock and Britney Spears and several other artists were performing. We're really enjoying the show. And we're about 2/3 of the way through it, and I said to my buddy, I think we can get better seats. We're gonna move down here and get down where the action is. And just like the Academy Awards, they got all these little 2-minute intermissions, for the commercial breaks. And so after the next artist, I go, whoever the next artist is, we're going to take their seats. So it was Christina Aguilera for Best New Artist. I'm looking at her seats, and I go, we got that. So as soon as the commercial break, boom, we jumped down there, and we filled those seats before the approved seat fillers could find it. So we jumped. It's kind of like musical chairs, right? If you just fill these seats. So now we're like right down with, the rock royalty here. And I'm just a few rows away from Carlos Santana, and the buzz was that he was going to probably win a lot that night. Well, I said to my buddy, I think Carlos is going to win for the big album of the year, Supernatural. It was a pretty easy bet, really. And he goes, yeah, that's probably right. but he's kind of like wondering where I'm going with this. And I go, he's been in the industry a long time, and I bet when they call his name, he's going to have a few people join him up on stage, part of his entourage. And my buddy's going like, no, no, no. I go, we're going to take the stage. And he's like, no, don't do it. And I go, hey, it's live TV. We're dressed. Who cares? You know, I don't think anybody's going to notice. It will depend. We'll see how it goes. So, and it's the last award of the night. If we get kicked out, so what? The show's over. Let's just, you know, they're not going to do anything. So, and sure enough, and the winner is Carlos Santana for Supernatural. Well, he gets a standing ovation, which made it even easier. So we're like kind of walking with him, next to him, and he's got, sure enough, his entourage. He had about 20 people around him that all took the stage with him because he's been in the industry so long. What's two more? So we took a position kind of in the back, not, you know, we didn't want to be standing next to, what's his name? Clive Davis, or who are these other guys up here? Yeah, I think it was. Well, anyway, all these heavyweights are up there, but I don't think anybody, even Carlos, knew all those people on stage. These were just, who knows, over the years. So two more in the back. Anyway, it was easy. So he gives his acceptance speech, and we're trying to get on camera. And then he's done, and so this gal comes over, and he has all of us go off stage back into the green room at Staples, which is where the party's going on. The champagne's flowing. It's just great. So my buddy's like, oh, my God, I can't believe we did that, you know, and the adrenaline's still pumping. And he's a big Sting fan, and we're standing next to Sting, and I took his picture with Sting, and it was great. And then Christina, no, what's her name? Gloria Estefan.
Oh, of course.
Gloria Estefan she got some award that year. Anyway, she comes up to me and she starts hitting on me. She's asking me questions like, haven't I seen you somewhere before, kind of stuff. And my friend is just cracking up. And so I go, hey, I'm married, you know. So anyway, so anyway, it's easy to walk out of Staples Center. So that was the Carlos Santana Grammys Award on stage.
And that was only the first time. You went back years later with much better company this time.
Yeah, so, you know, Barbara joins the scene, and so I just casually mentioned, so would you like to go to the Grammys this year? And she's like, okay. So we get dressed up. I don't know if you got that picture. So Barbara looked amazing, and I got the tux on, and so we get to Staples, and you know, the limos are all around this side here, and we're coming in from a different direction, and there's a policeman kind of guarding a door, but he doesn't know, and he doesn't care. You know, it's not his job. And so I went right up to him, and I said, you know, our limo dropped us off on the wrong side of the building, and we're trying to figure out how to get into the red carpet. Is there another way? He goes, oh, yeah, right over here, and he just opened the door for us. And so we're on the red carpet. It was that easy. And so we're first kind of just hanging back, kind of getting used to it. The adrenaline's pumping. Barbara's scared to death that we're going to get caught or thrown out or something. But I'm kind of getting comfortable with it. And there's like a ABC film crew there and stuff. And the producer's a little upset with the talent because he's like keeps missing all the stars. And the producer's like, didn't you see who that was? And the guy's, no. So then the producer's looking at me and says, can I give you the mic? And Barbara's like, no, don't do it. Yeah, he was just joking. But anyway, so we worked our way up and down the red carpet, and there was Ryan Seacrest, and we, you know, kind of photobombed him when he was on TV and stuff. So that was a fun moment as well.
Very nice. We're drawing to the end here, and I think it's appropriate that we end with one of the more recent events that you've done.
Oh.
So the royal wedding.
Yeah.
I think your most ambitious work yet.
This was another good one. So
tell us about your process.
Yeah, I've always got 2 or 3 things in the, you know, and I float these ideas by Barbara, and sometimes she bites, so I like, she's like, what's next? And I go, how about the royal wedding? It's coming up in May. You know, we go over to London. And she's like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Do you think we can get in? I go, no, but we'll figure something out. So I actually sent a letter on my attorney letterhead to Harry at Buckingham Palace, and or Kensington Palace. He's at Kensington, and requesting an invitation to the wedding. I didn't know where that would go. I didn't even think I'd get a reply, but I did. I got a letter back from his secretary and the Royal Mail letterhead and the whole shebang. It was amazing. And I had to read the letter twice because buried in paragraph 4, it never did say the word no. It said something in the British style. It's like, we regret, but we're unable to fulfill your request, or something very nebulous like that. So we took that as a yes.
They didn't say no.
Bought the tickets and figured out where to stay, and took the kilt, and Barbara had a beautiful dress there with a little fascinator, just bent to the side there perfectly. So we actually went, before we went, somehow the word got out that we're going to the royal wedding. Well, Vicky Vargas of NBC News in LA called me. And she says, is this Michael Lawler? And I go, yeah. He goes, this is Vicky Vargas, NBC News. We'd like to interview you. We hear you're going to the royal wedding. I go, how'd you find out about that? And she goes, oh, somebody told us. So where will you be? And, like tomorrow, we're going to come. And I go, how about Muldoon's in Newport Beach? Okay, I know where that is. So it happened to be, I'm in this group called the Celtic Bar Association. So this is a group of attorneys that meets at Muldoon's once a month for this big party, a bunch of lawyers and judges. And I called a friend of mine who is the British American Business Council or something like that. And I told her about this opportunity. I said, hey, I need about 20 more people, and I need about 50 British flags so we can all be flying, waving the flag because it'll look good on TV. Okay, so she comes up with 20 people and 50 flags, and so everybody's got a flag now. And we show up at Muldoon's, and sure enough, the NBC film crew's there, and they're interviewing us about going to the royal wedding. And I somehow let it out that, we don't have a ticket, and they thought that was just the best. So then we get to Windsor Castle the day before the wedding. It was Friday. The wedding is on a Saturday. And we actually went to the church and renewed our wedding vows the day before the wedding. Yeah. And so the parade is already, the people are lining up for the parade, kind of like, Pasadena, Old Town before the Rose Parade. It's already thick with people getting their spot and stuff. And we're kind of scouting things out. And again, I'm looking for a weakness in the security system, trying to figure things out. And Barbara sees a reporter with a mic that said NBC on it. Barbara calls out, hey, NBC. And the guy turns around and looks at us and goes, Michael? Barbara? He knew our names. And we're like, yeah. And he goes, I've been looking for you. Vicky Vargas told me to watch out for you. We're going live on NBC on the Today Show in 15 minutes. Come with me. And we jumped over the security, and we're like following him. We're in the castle at Windsor, and they got this whole stage thing set up, live from Windsor. It's the Today Show. And this was Robert Kovacic, and he's interviewing us. At this moment, Meghan Markle's father the question was, is he going to be available to walk her down the aisle? Yes, no, whatever. So I volunteered to walk her down the aisle if she needed somebody, being from California. This is on the Today Show, for heaven's sakes. So, and then I kind of found a way to get in. Well, so the next morning, now we're dressed like this. And this that you see here on the screen, this is actually a screenshot from the Netflix special, Harry and Meghan, episode 3, where, she had endless footage, right, that she could have used for her special on the wedding. She picked us. So this is our arrival at Windsor. Yeah.
Because Meghan made the documentary, of course.
Yeah. I think she might have had something to do with it. She was digging the kilt. Anyway, so we get to, and I saw where the security's all set up, and there's like 3 different rings of security, and we kind of did a end run around the right and went up this back alley and through a restaurant and out the kitchen, the back door. And next thing you know, we're at the gates of Windsor Castle, and we're in line with everybody else who's getting ready to go into the church for the wedding. And that's where we got turned around. We didn't have the right ticket to get in actually to the church to see the wedding, so we were outside. And then I'm looking around, I go, well, there's a really fun pub just right there. And so we walked in, and there's a table that says reserved, so we sat down and ordered a bottle of champagne and lunch, and it was just a wonderful time. We could hear the church bells and the cheering, and it was just great. And we had a second bottle of champagne, and then Robert Kovacic, NBC News, goes, we want to do a follow-up story with you. Where are you now? I go, I've had a little too much to drink. He goes, we don't care. So we told him where we were, and they brought the whole NBC film crew again to this little pub, and we did another post-wedding interview there. So we were on TV, NBC News, Today Show, live from Windsor, 3 times. So a couple of days later, Barbara's home, and she's in the checkout line at the grocery store, and somehow mentioned that she was at the royal wedding, and a total stranger in line says, I remember seeing you on TV.
You're the royal or local couple goes to Windsor.
Yeah, that was a good one. But there's one more story I got to tell you about, and it's the Pope John Paul. So,
Hold on.
yeah.
What about him? What was the event?
Well, he died.
As we all must.
And I'm not Catholic, but I was kind of a fan of Pope John Paul II. I thought he was a pretty cool pope. So I was thinking for a moment, oh my gosh, I bet they do a really big job with his funeral at Vatican. Wouldn't that be cool to go to the Vatican and enjoy Pope John Paul's funeral? But I kind of quickly dismissed that as just being a little too far extravagant. I didn't have the time. And then in the morning paper, I saw that our local church in Newport Beach, Our Lady Queen of Angels, one of the largest Catholic churches in Orange County, is going to have a special Pope's funeral mass that day at 10 o'clock. I go, that's pretty convenient. I'll just go to that. So I tried to get Kelly and some of the other, and nobody wanted to go with me. So I went to church by myself. I think it might have been the only time that I can remember where I actually went to church by myself. But so I got there right at 10 o'clock when it started, and the place is packed. Every seat is filled, and there's probably 20 or 30 people outside are trying to get, standing room only. So I walked down the center of the aisle just before the service started, and I'm looking left, I'm looking right. All I need is one seat. There was nothing available. So I get all the way to the very front row, and still nothing. But over here on the left side, if they scooch over just a little bit, they might make room for me. And I kind of give them the eye, like, could you please move over? Well, the gal on the aisle, she wasn't budging. She's holding her pole position there, front row on the aisle, and I've got to get around her, and then the guy next to her scooched down a little bit. So it was a little bit crowded, but I got to sit. I felt really awkward, especially not being Catholic. Here I am in the very front row for the Pope's funeral. My goodness. Well, they did and they had a visiting bishop there to give the communion and the lecture. So they did a very good job of commemorating Pope John Paul II. I thought, wow, that's great. And if I was one of the guys in the back, I probably would have scooted because they're just getting ready to do the Mass. Well, the Mass, with a church full of 1,600 people, this could take a half an hour or more. And I thought maybe I should probably just leave. But you can't leave if you're in the front row. So I thought, okay, I'm stuck. So then I thought, well, maybe I'll at least take Mass, with everybody else. But what are you supposed to do? I couldn't remember all the stuff. Well, I'll do whatever she does when next to me. So it came time to start the Mass, and she stands up to go up, and I just follow her up. Well, she doesn't stop where I thought she would stop, and she keeps walking all the way up to the altar. And I turn around and look, and there's nobody behind me. It's just the two of us. And I'm like, oh my God. So then she kneels down at the altar. Well, I didn't want to stay standing, so I kneeled down at the altar next to her. The two of us were like we're getting married or something. And then the bishop comes over and says all this stuff in Latin, and we're like, what is he saying, you know? And he's giving us, the two of us, like the super long version of communion that just went on and on. I'm like, oh my God. And about this time, I wish I wore a suit or something. You know, I'm wearing like a Tommy Bahamas shirt and some slacks and some topsiders. So I was way underdressed. And so the bishop comes over and gives her the silver chalice and says, this is the blood of Christ. And she looks at it and takes a sip. And then he gives it back to the bishop, and he gives it to me. It's the blood of Christ. And I look and I go, am I supposed to finish this? Is it disrespectful if you don't? I mean, you certainly don't want to waste any of the blood of Christ, right? So I thought, okay, and I threw it back. And handed him the cup back. I thought, well, maybe it's over. It ain't over. It's just beginning, because now the bishop brings over the tray of wafers, not to give me one, but to give me the whole frickin' tray, and he expects me to give communion now to this whole church. Oh my God. Talk about the adrenaline. So I get up, and look at this. So I'm like, what are those magic words you're supposed to say again? And, you know, this isn't just any old Sunday service. This is the Pope's funeral, for heaven's sake. So I hear the gal next to me. She hands the first wafer to her. She's got the left half. I've got the right half. You know, body of Christ. I go, oh, yeah. So I hand the wafer to the first guy. Body of Christ. Next, body of Christ. Body of Christ. And after 10 or 12, it was coming a little bit easier. And I'm actually enjoying the role. Body of Christ, with a little more flair each time. And then a guy comes through, and he doesn't have his hands out like this for the wafer. He's got his mouth open and his tongue out, and I got to put the wafer in his mouth. So then a lady comes through with a couple of little adorable kids, and I give her the wafer, body of Christ. And I look at these kids, and I go, they're too young for a wafer, but you're supposed to do something, right? So I didn't know. So I look at these adorable children, and I gently touch them on the forehead, and I say, Jesus Christ bless you in the name of the Father and the Son. And the mom's looking at me like, oh, my kid's going straight to heaven now.
That's shockingly close to what you're supposed to do.
Oh, it just came to me. I had no idea. So then a friend of mine comes through the line. He goes, Michael, what are you doing? You're not even Catholic. You're not a member of this church. And I go, body of Christ, keep the line moving. Come on. So we're nearly finished. I think we got through everybody on my half, and I look, and there's only 6 wafers left. It was nearly a perfect count. Another miracle. And what do I do with this tray now? And I thought, I got to give it. You know, she walks up to put her tray on the altar. I'm with her elbow to elbow, doing the sign of the cross and bowing about 6 times on my way up and back. Set the tray on the altar, and I go back, and the kneeler's down, thank goodness. And so I went right into prayer like this, with my hands up on the pew in front of me, praying for forgiveness. And at the very end of the service, it's time to blow the candles out with the acolyte. And the priest whose church this was, he comes and stops at the front row, and he slowly turns and gives me this long look like, who are you? And I want to have a word with you. But, you know, he couldn't. It's basically, you know, it's live TV kind of like thing. So he walks down the aisle to the front door, and that was one choice, but I looked around, and there was an exit door over here to the left. I'm wondering if the alarm's going to go off, and I didn't think so. So as soon as the row stands up to leave, I just slowly worked my way over and exited stage left. hit that door. Fortunately, the alarm did not go off, and I ran to my car. And I was so nervous, I didn't tell anybody about that for months. Finally, I met a friend of mine who was Catholic, and I said, "Oh, I got to tell you this story." And she goes, "My God, you were a lay Eucharistic minister." I go, "What's that?" And she goes, "Well, that's a big deal. It takes about 6 months of training, and you have to have, all this stuff." And I go, "Oh." I go, "Well, add to that list an accidental lay Eucharistic minister," because I had no idea. But anyway.
That only takes about 6 seconds of training.
Yeah, that was it. That's all I needed. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us.
Thank you.
What an incredible life, what incredible adventures, and for your 70th birthday.
Thank you.
I think I can speak for all of us here when I say I hope that there are many, many more.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Andy. Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to my sister Dana, who's watching from New York, and Tom Dietz from Northern California, and a few other friends out there watching it on our channel. Thank you very much for coming. The live audience here tonight, thank you all very much for celebrating my 70th birthday party.
And for the folks at home, good night. Woo!
Thank you very much, Michael.